Henyard says she is endorsing a new board, but not announcing who they are just yet, instead promising to name them later this month. Henyard is under investigation by the...
A shocking turn of events has gripped both Thornton Township and Dalton, as Mayor Tiffany Henyard, who also serves as township supervisor and famously dubbed herself the Super Mayor, was arrested by federal agents earlier today. This dramatic development follows years of controversy, including accusations of corruption, reckless leadership, and public stunts that have deeply divided the community and drawn widespread attention for months. Rumors had circulated about an FBI investigation into Henyard, fueled by allegations of misconduct, misuse of power, and questionable decisions. While many speculated about potential legal issues, few anticipated that the situation would escalate so suddenly. Henyard's arrest marks the culmination of years of growing scrutiny, mounting evidence, and public concern over her leadership. The news has left Dalton and Thornton Township in disbelief, shaking communities already divided by her bold and often contentious style of governance. Critics, who have long decried her actions as self-serving and reckless, now feel vindicated, viewing the arrest as confirmation of their long-standing claims. In contrast, Henyard's loyal supporters are scrambling to make sense of the situation, defending her as a misunderstood and ambitious leader who has been unfairly targeted by political adversaries throughout her tenure. Henyard's leadership was marked by controversies, including accusations of excessive spending on personal luxuries and the appointment of an unqualified police chief. Despite repeated criticism, she maintained a defiant public image, often dismissing her critics as politically motivated while positioning herself as a trailblazer who has unfairly opposed the arrest. Has now shifted the narrative from political drama to a legal reckoning, casting her leadership in a troubling new light. The community is left reeling, grappling with mixed emotions of shock, anger, sadness, and uncertainty over the far-reaching implications of this dramatic turn of events. For many of Henyard's detractors, this moment is seen as justice served. For her supporters, it is viewed as a politically charged attack on a leader who refused to conform to traditional rules. With Henyard's fate uncertain, both Dalton and Thornton Township face a leadership crisis, leaving residents to wonder what will come next. Henyard's once defiant image as the super mayor now faces the potential of being forever tainted by legal consequences.
Embattled Dalton Mayor Tiffany Henyard is mounting a re-election bid. Henyard made the announcement.
To understand the downfall of Mayor Tiffany Henyard, we must look back at the series of events that ultimately led to her arrest. From the moment she took office as mayor of Dalton and township supervisor Thornton, Henyard's tenure was defined by controversy. Her leadership, often described as audacious and unapologetic, quickly gained notoriety, with recurring allegations of corruption, misuse of taxpayer funds, and abuse of power. These accusations would become the backdrop of her tumultuous time in office. Henyard's decision sparked outrage among residents who accused her of putting her own interests above public service. Reports surfaced of extravagant spending, including luxury travel, lavish events, and questionable personal expenses. Her critics painted a portrait of a leader more concerned with self-promotion and indulgence than with serving her community. These acts of excess not only fueled public outrage, but also deepened the erosion of trust in her leadership in addition to her personal spending habits. Henyard's choice to appoint unqualified individuals to key positions further amplified calls for accountability. Her critics claimed these appointments were politically motivated, designed to reward loyal supporters rather than bring competent leadership to the township. As the controversy deepened, it became clear that public faith in Henyard was rapidly diminishing. Despite the mounting criticism, Henyard remained defiant. She dismissed the allegations as politically motivated, positioning herself as a trailblazer who was unfairly targeted by her opponents. She maintained an image of resistance, framing herself as a figure boldly challenging the political status quo. But while Henyard projected confidence, doubts continued to grow among residents and elected officials alike as more allegations piled up. The pressure for an investigation into Henyard's conduct reached a tipping point. Eventually, the FBI became involved, quietly building a case against her over the course of months, if not years. The investigation scrutinized a broad range of accusations, including financial misconduct, mismanagement of township resources, and potential backroom deals. These concerns raised serious questions about Henyard's ethical standards and decision-making abilities. Public meetings became battlegrounds, with heated exchanges between Henyard and the township's trustees reflecting the deepening divisions within the community. Her supporters rallied behind her bold, unconventional leadership, while her critics saw her actions as reckless and self-serving. The political storm that followed consumed both Dalton and Thornton Township, leaving the community divided and distrustful of its leadership. Henyard's rise, marked by her unorthodox approach to governance, eventually turned into a series of reckless and unethical decisions. The very audacious moves that once defined her leadership extravagant spending, and controversial appointments became the very issues that led to her undoing. Her refusal to acknowledge wrongdoing and her seeming disregard for concerns of her constituents set the stage for her inevitable downfall. The shocking climax came when Henyard was arrested by federal agents. Her once powerful image, once synonymous with bold leadership, was shattered in an instant as she was led away in handcuffs. For the residents of Dalton and Thorne Township, this moment served as a reckoning, a point of reflection on the turbulent legacy of a leader whose rise and fall had left an indelible mark on their community. Henyard's downfall serves as a cautionary tale of how unchecked ambition, when not held accountable by transparency and ethical standards, can lead to chaos and eventual collapse. The community, once deeply divided by her leadership, now faces the difficult challenge of recovering from the damage done and rebuilding trust in their local government. The implications of Henyard's arrest are far-reaching, and as the legal proceedings unfold, many are left wondering how such a promising leader could have fallen so far. Her legacy, now tainted by legal consequences and public disillusionment, serves as a stark reminder of the dangers of unchallenged power and the importance of holding public officials accountable for their actions.
2025, yet Tiffany Henyard has officially decided she wants to stay as mayor despite the cloud of controversy.
The arrest of Mayor Tiffany Henyard, also Thorne Township supervisor and self-proclaimed super mayor, unfolded early this morning at her Dalton home, marking a pivotal moment in a saga that has gripped the south suburbs. Federal agents descended on her property in a dramatic turn of events, with witnesses noting the presence of her boyfriend, Kamal Woods, who has faced controversies of his own. Woods reportedly watched as Henyard was led into custody, capping years of swirling allegations and an ongoing federal investigation under her administration, while the exact charges remain under wraps. Sources suggest they include embezzlement, misuse of public funds, and obstruction of justice, all related to her handling of Dalton and Thorne Township's finances. To understand the gravity of Henyard's arrest, one must reflect on the long trail of controversies that have followed her since she assumed office in 2012. From the outset, her leadership was defined by a bold, larger-than-life persona. Henyard was not content with merely being the mayor or township supervisor. She branded herself the super mayor, a title she proudly displayed on banners, billboards, and social media posts. Her face became ubiquitous across Dalton and Thorne Township, appearing on promotional materials, event flyers, and even village welcome signs, while supporters viewed her as a dynamic and approachable leader. Critics accuse her of self-aggrandizement, using public resources to promote her image rather than serve the community. Henyard, however, dismissed these accusations with characteristic confidence, often declaring herself the people's mayor and the people's supervisor. Her charisma and public presence drew both admiration and skepticism, as her tenure grew increasingly defined by controversies that extended far beyond her branding. Allegations of financial misconduct began to surface early in her term, including lavish spending on personal luxuries and questionable allocation of public funds. This fueled growing criticism and public distrust, especially as Henyard's ambitious and defiant style put her at odds with trustees and community members. Heated board meetings became a hallmark of her administration, often reflecting the deep divides within the township. The federal probe that ultimately led to her arrest had been quietly building for months, investigating potential misuse of township and Dalton funds, as well as her role in obstructing oversight and accountability efforts. Henyard's leadership, which once defined her as a bold and unflinching figure, became increasingly marred by financial controversies and a combative relationship with other officials. The investigation pointed to significant concerns about her stewardship of taxpayer money, which became a focal point for critics demanding greater transparency and accountability. One of the most shocking allegations was an astonishing $43,000 shopping spree on Amazon in a single day, reportedly charged to village accounts. This spending spree included high-end furniture and various other unexplained expenses, leaving residents and critics alike stunned. These purchases were seen as emblematic of Henyard's extravagant lifestyle. Fueled by public funds, this was not an isolated incident. Additional allegations of luxury travel and personal indulgences funded by taxpayers emerged over time. This growing pattern of financial mismanagement fueled widespread outrage and raised serious questions about Henyard's leadership priorities. Amid these controversies, one of the most contentious projects during her administration was the infamous skating rink summer club, which was said to minimize sex slaves in case of police intervention. The bizarre nature of the project, coupled with allegations that it was mishandled and funded by questionable means, only deepened public concerns. Henyard's focus on self-promotion and personal indulgence, rather than the needs of the community, had already alienated many, but these latest revelations sent shockwaves through Dalton and Thorne Township, underscoring just how far her leadership had strayed from public service. As the federal investigation continued, additional details emerged about Henyard's controversial appointments, including putting unqualified individuals in key positions and disregarding advice from trustees and experts. Her refusal to relinquish control, even in the face of mounting scrutiny, only fueled a growing sense of frustration among residents, many of whom felt their voices had been silenced. Throughout all of this, Henyard's defiant attitude, coupled with her unwillingness to acknowledge any wrongdoing, contributed to the image of a leader who had lost touch with the very people she was supposed to serve. The $2 million ring project, surrounded by allegations of harassment, was just one of many controversies that plagued Mayor Tiffany Henyard's administration, drawing criticism for being built without proper approval or adequate transparency. Critics argued that the rink, which was only open during events hosted by Henyard herself, seemed more like a vanity project than a true community asset, fueling accusations that it served her personal ambitions rather than the needs of the public. For some residents, it epitomized Henyard's alleged misuse of taxpayer money to fund projects that elevated her public image rather than focusing on practical governance and community development. Supporters, however, defended the initiative, arguing that Henyard's intent was to improve the community by providing new amenities and recreational opportunities. They contended that her bold approach to leadership was misunderstood by those opposed to her vision, believing that her efforts were in the best interest of the community. Despite these defenses, the financial controversy surrounding her tenure, including allegations of reckless spending, cast a long shadow over her leadership, sowing distrust among residents and attracting scrutiny from auditors and watchdog groups. As more details of her spending came to light, the community's dissatisfaction deepened, with board meetings becoming increasingly heated. Trustees and residents alike demanded answers and greater accountability, pointing to the unchecked spending and the perception that public funds were being diverted for personal or vanity projects. This growing discontent became central to the mounting criticism of her administration, while Henyard defenders continued to highlight her charisma and vision for community improvement. Her detractors, however, zeroed in on the mounting evidence of financial mismanagement as a clear sign of deeper issues within her leadership. The culmination of these financial scandals, combined with Henyard's defiant responses to critics, created an environment ripe for further scrutiny. Her combative relationship with local officials and trustees only fueled the sense that her leadership was unsustainable, setting the stage for federal investigation that ultimately led to her arrest. This arrest marked a dramatic fall for a leader who had once been celebrated for her audacity and ambition, leaving the South suburbs to reckon with the fallout from her downfall. The arrest sent shockwaves through Dalton, Thorne Township, and the broader region, with residents now grappling with the implications of the charges and Henyard's legacy. For some, it represents a moment of vindication, proving that the long-standing allegations against her were not baseless. For others, it marks the tragic end of a leader who promised to break barriers and connect with her constituents, but ultimately became a symbol of unchecked ambition and the dangers of a lack of accountability. As the legal proceedings unfold, Henyard's downfall serves as a cautionary tale about the perils of political leaders who strayed too far from ethical conduct and public service, leaving behind a legacy marred by financial misconduct, divisive leadership, and a broken community. As the details of the federal investigation into Mayor Tiffany Henyard's actions unfold, the community is left reflecting on the rise and fall of a leader who was once hailed as a dynamic force for change. Her tenure is likely to be remembered not just for her audacity and leadership, but also for financial mismanagement and personal indulgence that marred her time in office. While the ongoing federal probe will determine whether Henyard faces criminal charges, the damage to her reputation has already been done. Her fall from grace serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked power, the importance of transparency in leadership, and the lasting impact that financial mismanagement can have on a community's trust in its leaders throughout her tenure. Henyard's leadership style was as contentious as her spending habits, deepening divisions and raising eyebrows. From the very beginning, her time in office was marked by bold moves and decisions that often put her at odds with other officials in the community, reflecting a style that was both defiant and controversial. As the investigation continues, the community must now reckon with the full scope of her actions and the long-term consequences of her leadership. Frequent clashes with the Dalton Village Board of Trustees set the tone for a turbulent period in local governance under Henyard. Board meetings often descended into shouting matches, with trustees accusing her of overstepping her authority. In retaliation, she accused them of sabotage and obstruction. One particularly chaotic meeting saw Henyard storm out after being heckled by both residents and trustees. As she left the room, she shouted, "You all should be ashamed of yourselves," a dramatic moment that painted a picture of a leader whose sense of self was under siege. Henyard was battling not only her critics, but the entire political establishment. Her combative approach extended far beyond the boardrooms and became a defining feature of her public persona. Henyard frequently took to social media to air grievances, targeting opponents through fiery Facebook Live broadcasts. In these online tirades, she would call out critics by name, accusing them of jealousy, personal grudges, and attempting to undermine her leadership. In one particularly inflammatory broadcast, she labeled her detractors as enemies of progress and ominously vowed to expose every single one of them. These tirades drew mixed reactions. Her supporters rallied behind her boldness, praising her for confronting her opponents head-on, while critics questioned her professionalism and the appropriateness of using public platforms for personal attacks. Some residents voiced concerns about potential retaliation, alleging that Henyard weaponized her influence to silence dissent. Claims emerged that she used lawsuits, public shaming, and even township resources to target those who challenged her authority. Whether these claims were proven or not, they added to an atmosphere of tension and mistrust, where opposition was often met with fierce and personal responses, while Henyard's defenders framed her actions as those of a passionate leader fighting for progress against relentless obstruction. Her detractors argued that her leadership style was divisive, unprofessional, and ultimately damaging to the community. The escalating conflict, both in public meetings and on social media, became emblematic of an administration defined more by its controversies than its achievements, leaving Dalton and Thorne Township deeply polarized and struggling to cope with the turmoil created by Henyard's combative governance. The situation was further exacerbated when a board meeting had to be wrapped up early due to the absence of two key trustees, Chris Gonzalez and Carmen Carley, which resulted in not enough board members being present to make official decisions. This incident underscored the growing tensions within Henyard's administration, with reports suggesting that she had begun alienating important allies within her own ranks, fueling the fire surrounding her leadership. Over time, a number of former supporters, including trustees who had once backed her initiatives, turned against her. They accused Henyard of concentrating power at the expense of openness and cooperation. Her former assistant, Carmen Carlyle, became a vocal critic, alleging that Henyard routinely disregarded established protocols to push her own agenda. Carlyle claimed that Henyard operated with a my way or the highway mentality and, in a recent interview, expressed that Henyard's actions further alienated those around her, fostering a climate of mistrust and disorder. According to Carlyle, these internal divisions only widened the gap between Henyard and the board, contributing to a growing sense of disillusionment. The tension reached a boiling point when Henyard's trustees were accused of avoiding board approval for crucial decisions, including the hiring of key executives. One such controversial decision was Henyard's appointment of Ronald Burge as head of Dalton's police department. Burge, whose state certification was allegedly inactive at the time, was accused of being an unqualified appointee. This raised questions about Henyard's leadership decisions and her willingness to bypass established processes for her own purposes. The growing dissatisfaction within the township was compounded by these questionable appointments, fueling suspicions of favoritism and financial mismanagement. Henyard's disregard for board approval and her combative responses to critics only deepened the fractures within her administration, leading many to question whether she was capable of effectively leading the township, or if her leadership was merely a reflection of her ego and ambition. These issues continued to escalate, with her style of governance becoming a flashpoint for public unrest and discontent. The internal strife, coupled with her combative and divisive behavior, ultimately created a perfect storm that overshadowed any positive accomplishments during her tenure. The appointment of Ronald Burge as the head of Dalton's police department by Mayor Tiffany Henyard sparked intense controversy, with trustees arguing that her unilateral decision to appoint him was illegal. However, a judge ruled that Burge should serve in an interim capacity, further exacerbating tensions between Henyard's administration and the township. Some residents and business owners came forward claiming they had been targeted by her office for refusing to contribute to her campaign. One business owner alleged that his company was shut down after he declined to donate, while another accused Henyard of using the Dalton Police Department as a personal enforcement squad to harass critics and opponents. Henyard's former assistant, Carmen Carlyle, who had once been one of her closest allies, turned against her, calling herself a whistleblower. Carlyle accused Henyard of running the township like her personal fiefdom, and betrayal of Carlyle, a trusted confidant, was particularly damaging to Henyard's image. The most startling charges, however, came from trustees who accused Henyard of falsifying checks and hiding financial data to bypass board authorization. Once thought to have a healthy financial surplus, the township was revealed to be millions of dollars in debt. A preliminary financial report conducted by former Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot, hired to investigate the township's finances, painted a grim picture of financial mismanagement and a lack of oversight. Henyard dismissed the report as a political hit piece, accusing her critics of jealousy and hatred. In one particularly memorable Facebook Live video, she addressed her critics directly, calling them prejudiced and vowing to fight back against what she called conspiracy to destroy her, declaring, "When I sue everyone, I'm coming for the fame in my name, the fame in my character despite mounting controversies." Henyard remained defiant, frequently holding public events like turkey giveaways and holiday parties, using these occasions to defend her record and rally her supporters. However, while Henyard focused on self-defense through social media, federal investigators quietly began their probe earlier this year, questioning witnesses and reviewing financial data from both Dalton and Thorne Township. As the FBI built its case, the investigation expanded to include Henyard's political committee and charity. With allegations of money laundering and the misuse of public funds, the arrest of one of Henyard's top allies earlier in the year was seen as a turning point, with many speculating that he had agreed to cooperate with authorities in exchange for leniency. When news of Henyard's arrest spread, the community reacted swiftly and with divided emotions. Supporters expressed shock and disbelief, some accusing the FBI of targeting Henyard simply because she was a young black woman in a position of power. One supporter argued that despite the public outcry, the arrest had been long overdue, claiming Henyard had been running the town like her own personal kingdom for years, as Henyard now faces federal custody. There's a sense of uncertainty about the future of Dalton and Thorne Township. Some residents and trustees are calling for new leadership, while others are concerned about the long-term damage to the community's reputation. "We need to rebuild trust and restore integrity to our local government," one trustee said, reflecting the sentiment that the scandal will take time to overcome. As the dust settles, it's clear that Henyard's fall from grace will have lasting effects on the region, leaving the community to grapple with the consequences of a leader whose audacity and ambition ultimately led to her undoing.